Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast and the Toolbox Extra. We're going to be right back with this week's Toolbox Extra guest, but as always, I want to give a shout out to my great sponsors. Now, these are companies that you should be using. You should have them working for you. So I want you to take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our Toolbox Extra guest, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Booster Hub, the #1 Booster Club software program. You know, if you got a Booster Club and you're doing sponsorship sales, concession sales, all of that's going to go through the Booster Hub platform. Volunteer signups, volunteer changes, you know what's going to happen. Nothing falls through the cracks. Everybody stays engaged. Give your boosters the platform they need. Give them the platform they deserve. And that platform is Booster Hub. We also want to say thanks to Hometown. Hometown continues to be a leader in education-based athletics with their solutions that include things like digital ticketing, athletic website construction, fee-free fundraising through a school funder, but their list just goes on and on. Whether you're a principal, an athletic director, even a head coach, Hometown is going to show you how to save time, how to raise more money, and how to bring your entire community together. You're going to find it all at hometown.com. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Gipper. Gipper is the modern marketing platform that makes it easy for any athletic department to look like they're Division I, look like they're professional grade. Gipper is used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college athletic programs. It's professional graphic design made easy. Use one simple platform to create, share, and schedule all your social media content, and that platform is Gipper. Go to Gipper.com to get started, and as always, make sure you tell them you heard about it on the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys. If you're not using a survey to take the pulse of your student athletes, your coaches, especially your parents, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that really connects you to everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Let's also say thanks to Huddle. You know, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years. As an AD, we were a Huddle school, and our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just love the Huddle platform. Go to huddle.com. Join the millions of users and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. We also want to say thanks to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio program, and while they were getting their degree, they also completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. We want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see all their great products in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thank you to Home Campus. If you do things like scheduling, work with rosters, communicate with parents, staff, student athletes, manage facilities, Home Campus does all of these things and more. Does it better? Does it faster than the other platforms? Did I mention athletic eligibility and clearance? That one alone is a game changer. Go to homecampus.com to find out all the great things that they can do for you and your department. That's homecampus.com. And we want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and Beacon Creative, their content program. Now, Wall of Fame has been helping schools bring their legacy to life for over a decade, but Beacon's and Wall of Fame's content program features a dedicated team of writers and designers that work with you to help make your digital tributes shine. They're going to provide you with all the resources needed to celebrate your rich history and highlight your proudest moments. They are going to help you tell powerful stories and really bring your school's legacy to life. I want you to reach out to Vital Signs Wall of Fame, click on Content Services, and as always, with all of our sponsors, make sure you tell them you heard about it on the Educational AD Podcast. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Toolbox Extra on the Educational AD Podcast. We're going up to Idaho today, and our guest is Dr. John DeWitt. He's got an incredible background as an athlete, as a leader in the athletic space. Excited to hear from him. John DeWitt, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. Glad to be here, and hope the listeners find this information useful.
Oh, no, well, absolutely. That's what we pride ourselves on, sharing best practices and resources for ADs, coaches, and leaders. John, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us your quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. As I love to say, give us your life story in 2 minutes. What's the John DeWitt origin story?
The Cliff Notes version. So if people even know what that is anymore. So I was born in Arkansas, grew up, was a skinny kid, didn't start on my high school football team until I was a senior. Ended up, we won the state championship that year, walked onto the football team at Vanderbilt, got a scholarship after the first semester. I can go into that for days. And then tried out with the 49ers, and then decided I was going to go back and be a volunteer coach because the tryout obviously didn't end up the way I wanted it to. So I volunteered at my old high school and was a youth counselor at the church. And then as I was coaching in high school, I think I was getting more fired up for the games than the players were. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to keep pursuing this football thing. And so I went to a scout camp that you could pay like $100 for, and it was in Texas. And the scout for the Houston Oilers, yes, I am that old, he had me stay after, do some more drills, asked if I had an agent. I said, absolutely not. And they sent me a rookie contract the next day that was $103,000. And I thought that was $1 million back then, because it was crazy. And it was funny because as soon as I signed it, he literally told me, he's like, you should probably get an agent. And so I was thinking, wait, did I just get ripped off? What's going on? So went on and played. I was in Houston, and then they sent me over to Europe to play in Scotland, where we won the championship. And that was called the World League back then. And then I played a second season and they called it NFL Europe, because they've been trying to get into Europe for years. That's why they play so many games over there now. But then I ended up playing in Canada. I played arena football. I played the XFL the first time around. And so that's pretty much it for me. I have, happy stories, sad stories, just whatever you'd like to know.
No, again, I just love to hear the stories. I want to talk a little bit about first, where'd you go to high school in Arkansas?
Southside.
Okay.
Southside.
All right. Well, 100 years ago, I spent 1 year coaching at Subiaco Academy. So, so not too far from that.
School there. Yeah.
Not too far from that area. Making that transition, as you described it, from you didn't start to your senior, you were a walk-on, college, what were some, I'm going to say, key moments? I'm a big moment guy for you. Maybe it was, hey, I'm finally a starter in high school, or, I got that scholarship at Vanderbilt. Any key moments stick out for you? Like, hey, this is, the coolest thing that ever happened.
Well, it was kind of funny because in high school, probably half the team are guys that just want to say they're on the football team. They don't really care if they play a lot or not. They just like to talk about being on the team. The only reason I actually started was because Art Gramling, the guy that was starting in front of me, got hurt. And so I started and was doing pretty well. I was a defensive end. And I honestly didn't think I was ever going to play past high school. And we ended up playing the crosstown rival, Northside. We were Southside, they were Northside. And the state championship game was the very best game I ever played up to that point, because I honestly thought it was going to be the last time I ever played. And so because of that, as soon as the game was over, I led the team in tackles, and everybody was like, who is this guy? And I took my pads off right away, and the reporters were looking around for me, but they couldn't tell who I was because I didn't have my jersey on. And then my best friend's sister went to Vanderbilt, and I ended up getting accepted based on the academics. And this is one of the key moments. I walked in, and back then you had VHS highlight tapes. And so I'd sent the highlight tape of the championship game. The guy in charge of recruiting at Vanderbilt had watched the tape. He had my dad and I come into his office and sat me down, and he said, "You're too small and you're too slow to play in the SEC." And I just kind of looked at him and instantly thought, I'm like, he has no idea who he's talking to. And my dad, he didn't either, because we walked out of the office. My dad kind of patted me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Well, we tried." And I was like, "Oh no, it's going to happen now." I'm like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And he actually ended up getting fired the next semester after I got my scholarship. So, and the craziest thing too is when you're a walk-on, you don't get any time in practice. The only time you could practice was when there was a scrimmage, like afterwards, and they're just kind of as an afterthought. And we had some really, really good offensive linemen. Greg something or other, I can't remember what his name was, but I was still small. I weighed like 213 pounds, and the team picture, they would, old school again, they would just take your individual picture, and I didn't have my jersey on. They had me as an offensive lineman weighing 213. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's not good." The disrespect was everywhere. And so I was going against this one guy they thought was going to go pro, and I beat him on a pass rush. And then another play, I beat him again. And so then the coach stopped everybody and said, "All right, I just want Greg and DeWitt to go." And I kept beating the guy. And the head coach looked at him and he was like, "Greg, I guess that's the best you can do." So it was, and I set it up to where the coach, at the end of the season, you have your postseason meeting. And he said, "As far as we're concerned, you're on full scholarship." And I asked him, because it was November, I said, "Can you write my parents a letter that says that I have a full scholarship?" And he gave me the letter, and I put it under the Christmas tree. And when they opened it, everybody was crying. My dad, I felt bad for my sister because Christmas was over at that point. He just called all his friends right away. And it was a really, really exciting moment for me.
Now that is a very, very cool story. That's got a Hollywood script on it. I'm telling you. So very cool. Thanks for sharing that. All right, you kind of outlined, that journey, maybe as a journeyman, with the NFL.
All the time in the papers, I was the journeyman.
Yeah, but again, many of us would gladly have gone on that route with you. Couple of NFL teams. You mentioned NFL Europe. Certainly, I remember the Scottish Claymores.
Yeah.
And after that football career's over, okay, was your and again, for our listeners, we're going to be talking about I lost my notes here, the NIL Smart Hub, which is John DeWitt's platform. Take us on that journey from that led to, well, geez, maybe I could do this, or I should do that, or I want to do this. How did it all happen? And then we're going to take a deep dive into the platform itself.
Okay. So back, like I was saying, when I was trying to get a scholarship back then, obviously there was no such thing as NIL, and all you had to do was work hard, work on being the best athlete you could be, try to, compare yourself to who was starting, and just train. You just always say, train harder than any sane person would train. And that would give you the confidence when you got in a game and you were exhausted, and you would just think, okay, nobody on this field trained as hard as I did. And that's all you had to think about. Well, now I started hearing about the NIL and the transfer portal and all this stuff. And I was just like, after dealing with kids, with the church youth group and the counseling and all that, I knew that amount of pressure with the NIL, the transfer portal, social media, expectations, and all that stuff, I was just like, okay, if I don't understand it, I guarantee you there's a lot of kids and even parents that don't understand it. So they need something to be able to educate them on how it works.
As you, again, we're moving on with your career and through with your career, what are some things that, you've seen or that you saw back in the day, pre-NIL that now, the fact that NIL exists and there's so much misinformation about it that really feel that, compelled to share, with the schools and the teams and the individuals that you work with?
One of the biggest things is the parents and the pressure. I mean, parents are great. I understand they love their kids and they think their kids are all Americans and are going to be great. And that being supported is really important. But I feel like a lot of parents, they see all these big numbers on the college NIL side and are just thinking, oh, my kid's going to make millions and we're going to have to pay off our mortgage and all this stuff. And they're going to be the golden goose that takes care of it. And they don't fully understand the amount of pressure that puts on their kids. And the kids feel like if I let them down, then they're going to be sad and I'm going to get in trouble. And so I just wanted to really make sure what I do is I go in to schools and talk to the parents and the athletes, kind of give them a realistic perspective on how it actually works, and also explain that it's changing week to week, it seems like, and it's different from state to state, and give them a breakdown of how it works. And then I also offer ongoing consultations if anything comes up and they get upset or they get confusion about something, because when you don't understand something, that makes you get into an emotionally reactive state. And so something comes along and you just jump at it because your neighbor's kid has a deal or something, and that can get you into a situation that's not ideal. And so I just try to slow everybody down and be like, okay, let's think about this. And I'm not giving any legal advice. I'm definitely not an attorney or an accountant or an agent or any of that kind of stuff, but just basic information so that they understand how it works. And then I also go in and talk to athletic directors and coaches to kind of keep them up on, you need to be supportive, obviously, of the team and have the best team on the field, but you are, as they already know, you're dealing with so much stuff that if parents come up and are upset because their kids aren't playing and that kind of thing, you need to be able to handle that from a non-emotional perspective. And that can be really hard. I have another quick story. In high school, the big star defensive player when I was a freshman was his name was Greg too. He was a really big kid, and his dad was probably 350 pounds. And he would come to the games and loud guy. And during the playoffs, he had his son had been sat down and he wasn't going to play. And it was because he'd taken some cold medicine before the game and he couldn't breathe. And so the coach said, okay, well, we're going to sit you out. His dad didn't know that happened. Now imagine 350 pounds running down the bleachers. There was a chain link fence around the field. He belly flops over the chain link fence, and he was probably about 6'5", and the defensive line coach was probably 5'6". He gets right in that coach's face and is just yelling and screaming. And I was even impressed back then. My coach had his hands behind his back and was just looking at him, smiling and nodding his head. And he calmly told him, your son took some cold medicine and he can't breathe. And the dad calmed down real quick and said, okay, I didn't understand. And he left. But it's interesting. I can't even, the parents can be a big challenge.
No question about it. Having been a coach and an AD for, 40 plus years,
Yeah.
had a few of those adventures. Most of our listeners, almost all of our listeners to this podcast, they're athletic directors, they're coaches. We also have a few parents, believe it or not. And I think ADs and coaches, they have primary jobs. And I think everyone would agree, all of our listeners would agree that helping with, the recruiting process is part of that job. But there's only so many hours in the day. Parents, sometimes they probably fall into 8 different extremes, but one extreme is, they come in at the end of that freshman year, maybe a sophomore year, and they say, my son isn't getting, or daughter, whatever the sport is, isn't getting, any calls or any letters from colleges. Why aren't you promoting them? From a coach and AD perspective, there's a possible response. If your son or daughter is good enough with all the technology and huddle and everything, the coaches, college coaches, they're going to know about them. They will reach out if they want them. How does your platform, I'm opening the door here for you, how does the NIL Smart Hub service those two situations and a lot more?
Well, I've got it broken down. There's a ridiculous amount of information in there, but I try to break it down into what they can expect in the freshman and sophomore level, focusing more on development. And then you get to be a junior, you're going to start having different opportunities potentially pop up. And they're not $1 million deals, obviously. It's like the mom and pop pizza place down the streets offering you free pizza if you mention them in your social media posts. And what kids don't understand is that can be perceived as an NIL deal because there's something of value that's being exchanged. And then seniors, obviously, I kind of show them and explain to them that one of the biggest things is you have to be careful what you post on social media. And it's not just the videos, it's your comments. Because say you lose to a team and you're all upset, and then one of their players gets on social media, makes a post about, oh, we beat them and they're terrible. And then you get offended and you jump in the comments and start getting in a fight with them in the comments. That's not going to make college recruiters look at you in a positive way, because they want to see that you have character and you have and you're humble and have somebody that's not trying just out to get perks and for the NIL things, if they just sign up for anything that comes their way. And with the transfer portal, I mean, I don't know if we're going to go into this later, but the transfer portal has really changed the competition for college spots for high school kids. Because if you're a college coach, you have a whole group of proven athletes that have played in college, they're already developed, and they know how it works. And you take that and try to compare that to a high school kid that might be great, but they're smaller, they're not used to being in a particular system. And so if there's anything that makes the recruiter stop and pause and wonder, is this kid really, is he a high quality kid, or how is this going to work? Then they're just going to move on. They don't have time to wait and try to figure it out. So they'll move on to somebody else.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of great points. The opportunity to, earn NIL dollars as a high school student, it's certainly, I think, safe to say it's becoming the norm, the opportunity, not so much the earning of it, for athletes. And those small town mom and pop, sponsorships, if you will, are certainly, something that never existed in our day. So it is kind of cool. And I think a lot of parents, a lot of kids don't realize that those opportunities are out there. At the collegiate level, the marketing, I spoke to another person who operates in this space. And, me, I'm kind of that old school, cranky old guy on the front porch. These kids on social media, blessed to receive an offer from this institution, so fortunate to get my 14th offer. And it strikes me as, well, hey, congratulations, you got an offer. But it just reeks of the whole, look at me culture. And as somebody who coached college, back in the 90s, if I saw that, I would say, well, the heck with you. Go to that school. I'm not going to waste my time recruiting you. I want kids that want to come to our school. Now, this person told me that that's just the way it is now, and college coaches understand that. What's your opinion on that? Posting all these so-called offers.
Well, that's what's interesting. When I mailed out my high school highlight tape, I got offers from all kinds of schools, but just because they send you a letter doesn't mean you're actually getting offered a scholarship. And kids nowadays, I mean, for better or worse, it doesn't matter. They have fallen into that social media bragging about, this and that and the other. And it gets tricky as far as the coaches and ADs go, because say, Susie down the street got an NIL deal for $100, which I guess to them is a huge amount of money, but their best friend Sarah down the street doesn't have an NIL deal. And so the parents get very competitive, and they're like, well, my daughter's just as good as her daughter. And they go to the coach and they're like, hey, why doesn't she have an NIL deal? You have to do something about that. And in the majority of the states, the coaches cannot get involved in that kind of thing. They can't say, oh, well, let me hook you up with this guy down the street. They can't do that, because that can really be against the association rules for that particular state. And they just feel that pressure. And I understand they just want to calm the parent down and give them a solution, but they have to be aware of what the rules are.
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I was talking to a recruiter from Michigan State the other day, and it was hilarious because we were talking about this, and he said, and I asked him, what's the first question you hear from recruits? And he said, it's sad to say, but the first question I hear 90% of the time is, what kind of NIL money are we looking at here? And when can I transfer? And I said, that's like going to a job interview and saying, when do I get my bonus and when can I leave? I'm like, that's not, it's not how it's supposed to work. And so their whole perspective is really skewed because of social media, which is why I try to educate them earlier so they don't react to offers, but they actually understand them better.
Yeah, and you alluded to this earlier, and it's still certainly true that the NIL landscape seems to change, on a daily basis. What was a rule, talking about the college level, is no longer a rule. And I guess talking about high school, some states, they have NIL state associations. They have NIL rules and policies, and if you break these rules, there's a consequence. I know of one state, pretty high profile state, for high school sports, particularly high school football. They don't have rules. They have NIL guidelines, and it's literally the Wild West in that state. And I think from a high school standpoint, we probably need those rules. But I guess I got off on a little tangent there. You mentioned transfer portal. Okay. I'm old school. I'm not a fan at all. Not a fan. Athletes should, be able to transfer, but, anyway,
that's a whole other thing.
in your conversations with college coaches, do they give you a feel? Is the transfer portal, going to be changing in the coming years? I just don't see how they can continue to operate and sustain this model.
Yeah, I think it has to change. I mean, I know, I'm sure you heard this too, even in high school in certain states, you can transfer as much as you want. And there were 7,000 transfers in Florida, where you are.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Last year, and some of the players transferred 4, 5, 6 times. And that, I can understand that if there's like some sort of safety concern or, their mental health, for whatever reason they need to leave, or if the family's moving to a different area. But if they're just doing it because the competition is too much where they are and they want to get to a place where they can start, that you're not able to build a culture around a team, because you don't ever know what players you're going to have. And it affects ticket sales, because if you're a local and you want to support the local football team, let's say, and you've had so many transfers that you don't even know who any of these players are. So people aren't going to the games like they used to.
No, we've said that for years, that Florida high school, the transfer portals existed in Florida at the high school level for years. And it's not so much that, the no coach, no AD is in favor of it. It's a state statute that some disgruntled parent got their buddy who was a senator to submit a bill years ago, and it got signed into law. Now, speaking of that, by the time this podcast airs, and we're recording this, listeners, on May 22nd, there's actually legislation on the governor's desk. He's supposed to sign it maybe this week, that's going to take that away, that, athletes, right now in Florida, a student can play a fall sport at school A. At the end of that sport, they can transfer to school B and play a winter sport. And at the end of that season, they can transfer to school C and play a spring sport at 3 different high schools. And it's a state law, student rights, whatever you want to talk about it. And as I mentioned, no coach, no AD is in favor of it. Supposedly the governor is going to sign this bill, it's called the Florida Coaches Coalition. They, help generate interest for this, that says whatever school you start at in the fall, that's your school for the school year, unless, as you mentioned, there's a move by the family, or I hate to even use this term, showing cause, that they need to transfer. So hopefully that it's a return to normalcy, is what a lot of us are calling it. Let's get off the transfer portal and get back to your platform, NIL Smart Hub.
Mhm.
You got a ton of different services, again, for schools, for ADs, for coaches, and for parents and families. Um, since our listeners are primarily ADs, what are some of the resources that you offer that's going to allow them to share with their coaches and their parents? Hey, you should check this out.
Well, one of the places in the hub has all 50 states listed and what their particular rules are. And I try to keep that updated as much as possible because, like we said, it changes so much from day to day. But there's 4 separate approaches to NIL that the states have, and one is the most restrictive, and then it goes down to Florida, do pretty much whatever you want. And it explains explains the decision-making process. It has guardrails to be like, okay, stay in this lane, don't veer off into this gray area here, or that could affect your kid's recruiting status and things like that. Just trying to give them, I have coaches tips in there, ADs tips on, things to look out for. If they do have any parents that they're having issues with and they've just been giving them a hard time for a long time, then I will do one-on-one conversations with them. I like to call myself the de-escalator. So if somebody's upset, I can talk to them. And basically, I always refer them back to the objective stats. Be like, okay, well, what are the starters? What are their 40 times? What's their vertical? What's this? What's that? And what is your son's? What are his times in those things? And if they're like, oh, well, they're totally different. I'm like, yeah. So let's focus on that right now, because that's what in the NFL, they almost treat you like cattle. It's all about numbers. I mean, they measure how big your hand is. They measure your thigh around in 3 spots. They ask you if you have anybody in your family tree that's ever played professional sports. And it really takes the emotional part out of it. And that's one of the biggest things, is just helping coaches, helping ADs, helping parents, helping kids all understand kind of how it works. And one good example is, so say you have a kid that really likes to go hunting, and he gets an offer from a very anti-hunting brand of some sort. And it wouldn't really be in his best interest because he can't make videos about something he really doesn't understand. And it's just going to take him off track. And that's the other thing about a lot of these deals, is you have to look at the deliverables that they're asking you for. Because if they ask you to make 40 posts a week, then, I mean, that's not rational. But kids, they just look at the numbers, and the parents too, and they're just like, oh, we're going to do that even though it's $100, and we're not going to care if they have to post 40 times. And it's like, well, you got to fit school in there somewhere. And it's just and that's what it feels like now. It's almost like kids in high school, if their parents and if the kids want to be athletes, that's pretty much the focus. And school is just kind of an afterthought. And that is something that I'm trying to help them realize the reality of it. And if they get hurt and can't play any sports anymore, that's not your whole identity. I mean, it's part of your character and how you develop as a young adult, but it's not your entire identity, because when it goes away, then what are you going to do? And I see that a lot with guys that I played with, because they were, I'm going to play until I can't play anymore. And I'm like, okay, well then what's your plan after that? And 90% of them are just like, oh, I don't know. It's a little scary.
Yeah. And again, the high school experience, we celebrate it. It's great. We loved our high school experience. I just had my 50th high school reunion. So that's how old I am. But I think when we get to talking about student athletes, whether it's high school or college, again, 96% of those high school student athletes, they're not going to play again. Okay, so their athletic career is going to end, and probably 99% of college athletes, their career is going to end. So we certainly have to celebrate the great experience that athletics provides, but at the same time, it is not. When your career ends, it's not the end of the world. It's the start of your life. John, tremendous resource, and thanks so much for coming on. If our listeners want to find out more, and listeners, I want you to find out more, Let's give out the website. What's the best way that they can get a hold of you and pick your brain to find out more?
Okay. You can go, it's a long one. You go to jdfootballtraining.com/podcast. There's a free resource for ADs and coaches, and there's a reality check that kind of breaks down, what you can expect in high school. And there's also a section if you want to schedule a call to talk to me about your particular situation, you can do that as well.
Okay. And John's information is also on LinkedIn. So, make sure you check out the website and, follow up with John. Tremendous resource. Dr. John DeWitt, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. All the best moving forward. And we're going to have to get you back on for an update down the road.
I appreciate it, Jake. Thanks so much.
For our listeners, we want to say thanks to you and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do Toolbox Extra just about every week and just about every day. We try to share stories and best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next Toolbox Extra on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Hey, before we go, of course, we want to give a shout out one more time to our great sponsors. Let's say thanks to Booster Hub, the #1 booster club software program. That's boosterhub.com. Home Campus, it's a platform you're going to use every day, and it does scheduling, rosters, results, eligibility. It does all those things better than the other platforms. Go to homecampus.com. Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. You'll find them at sidelineinteractive.com. Athletic surveys. If you're not using a survey to take the pulse of your parents, your coaches, your student athletes, you're really missing out. Let's say thanks to Hometown and their suite of solutions. Go to hometown.com. Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Make sure you check them out. Huddle. I used it as a football coach. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. Go to huddle.com. I want to say thanks to Gipper. Turn your school's website into a social media destination. Find out how to do it all at Gipper.com. And Vital Signs Wall of Fame and Beacon Creative. Check them out, vitalsignswalloffame.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.